I think one of the trends that I'm seeing, and I really encourage everybody to start thinking about this before you're in a position where you don't have a choice, is start looking into compliance frameworks. How does that affect your business? Because right now you're probably already seeing more and more complicated cyber liability insurance questionnaires coming your way. And the way the industry and the government is going is towards legislation. So in short enough order, you're going to see a much more stringent bar to get cyber liability insurance of any kind or be protected at all.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Robert Praul. He's the Technology Director at DivergeIT. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So again, I'm Robert Praul, Technology Director for DivergeIT. We are a managed service provider, primarily based here in Southern California, although we do have offices also in Memphis and other parts of the country. I have been doing IT for about 30 years. So started my career traveling the country, installing systems in country clubs, all the way through being an IT director for a $500 million apparel company, and then really moved into the MSP space and wanted to get into a smaller company and really leverage my IT philosophy to help that grow. Because we kind of believe that if you apply the right IT philosophy to your IT, you can reduce the cost, increase productivity, and really have a lot more effective and efficient system.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And, talking about DivergeIT kind of a little bit more, tell me a little bit more about what you guys do.
Sure. So as a managed service provider, we focus on everything from outsourcing the help desk all the way through project work. So we're able to provide the services to help augment a company with help desk or replace that IT staff entirely if it's not functioning for them, or they have a departure that leaves them in a position where they need to find new leadership. Because one of the downsides of depending on internal IT, especially for small businesses, is really one person can't handle at an expert level this broad spectrum of requirements, especially in the world we're in today, where there's new technology constantly coming, security requirements. Literally month by month, we see changes in expectations from cyber insurance, compliance frameworks, security needs, vulnerabilities, et cetera, that really require a level of competence and certification and expertise to handle correctly. Otherwise, they're really dependent on someone who's good at making them feel like they know what they're doing.
Tell me more about that.
Sure. Well, one of the key things that we do is we come in and we do a lot of assessments to help companies and their leadership better understand what their potential risks are, both on from a staffing standpoint, as well as technology, security, et cetera. One of the most interesting things that we find is that the very basics are the things that oftentimes are considered not a priority. And we struggle with that in our own organization in terms of how we apply resources. But imagine a single IT person shop or a small shop. Almost 99% of those, if I come in, I find machines that are missing antivirus, the most basic of all tiers of IT protections. They're missing backups. Backups are failing, not being completed, not restorable. They are missing patching. In today's day and age, single patch missing could result in the entire company being attacked very easily. And then they have really no idea or comprehension of how they exist in this bigger world of connectivity. And I think that's the real limitation, right? Is these internal people often become experts at these specific niche programs, et cetera, that keep that company running, but really have no fundamental understanding of how they're part of this interconnected world.
Hmm. So do you think, being able to provide the services that Divergent, is able to support with supplementing kind of the work that they're already doing, I imagine that's got to help with scalability for their IT infrastructure and making sure that their systems are functioning effectively.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I use this parallel when I talk to clients often, which is, have you ever tried to get in shape? If you try to do that yourself with no external input or guidance, it can be a very difficult journey. Failure chances of failure are high. But if you bring in someone like a personal trainer, nutritionist, experts that can help you ensure that you just following these steps helps you achieve that goal, your chances of success are much, much higher. And it's a lot like that, where we're able to say, not only is it one company where it's roll the dice and hope you succeed, we have succeeded over myriad of companies. So we're able to bring that expertise to you to say, this is what works for this many companies. Because people get hung up on a lot of little things, like the brand name, as opposed to what's the real objective to be.
Yeah. And, especially with the specialized services that you are able to provide, recognizing where those weaknesses may lie. And one of those things, the company doesn't know what it necessarily doesn't know. Like, they specialize in what they're doing. So, having the services like Divergent to be able to say, hey, this is what we see, we want to protect you and be a partner to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing that outsourced services, help desk, system administration, network, et cetera, project implementations, 90+% of all projects done internally fail. Having that outside person to come in and not be bogged down by baggage and priorities, et cetera. And then also security. Like, as a managed security service provider, we're able to turnkey bring in and secure the environment really efficiently and professionally. And imagine, like, even with a small team, trying to learn all these different tools, implement these systems themselves, monitor them, react to them. It all becomes very expensive very quickly.
Yeah. And you mentioned too that it can be catastrophic for a company that doesn't necessarily have these systems and security set up. So talk to me a little bit about how Divergent is able to minimize the downtime and provide, reliable support for its clients.
Sure. So really understanding what it takes to keep the systems running is important. Very rarely when we assess a client, do they have any monitoring that will let them know, even if it's in real time, that some system is being impacted or going down. So whether that's telling us utilizing memory, that there's a disk error that's about to fail. Many places have these notifications. They just have no systems around reacting to them and prioritizing them accordingly. Great example is the famous Target breach. Like, they were being told they had all the information they needed to prevent that, but their people were not prioritizing responding to those alerts. So whether it's false positives, they don't have the expertise to get it down to the real nitty gritty of what makes a difference, or just too many priorities. Either one, it's very difficult for small teams to perform at that level.
Interesting. I think that's a good reference to put our listeners into some context too, like, a real world example of the what can happen if you ignore, the concerns that people raise. So, I'm curious, when you're talking about your clients, do you find trends in the size and the industry of companies that tend to work with Divergent?
We actually are across many different verticals. So everything from legal to sports entertainment to manufacturing, accounting firms, et cetera. So we have a very broad swath of verticals that we serve. And what we find is really that there's this underlying layer of IT that is underserved in the majority of companies, because exactly what we're saying is that if they're not managing their AV appropriately, that's a flaw. No matter how good they get at other things, if you can't ensure your patching's done, if you can't ensure your AV's done, if you can't ensure security awareness training is happening, things like this, every single one of those is that opportunity to affect productivity because it brings down the environment. And it affects the ability to implement change. So, with all the versions of Office, every version creates incompatibilities as you go to roll out new features, especially security and others. So the ability to keep that environment current and know and have the visibility that it is meeting your expectations is really critical for success.
So you just mentioned security awareness training. Is that something that DivergeIT is able to support companies with?
Sure. We offer security awareness training and roll it out and help companies manage that. And beyond that, one of the big approaches that we've taken is really creating tools that help our clients participate with us at the level that we're at. So as opposed to having to rely on trust, like I have my smart guy, he comes in my office, I have to trust what he says. Maybe he can show me a report, but I'm not even really in a position to investigate and vet how accurate this information is. Where we take a different approach. We move much towards the idea of using full visibility and transparency. So we've developed a system called the real-time IT intelligence system. It's a dashboarding system that gives our clients the same visibility I use to create technology plans for them, so that in real time, we can both see that this machine is missing antivirus and know that automations are running trying to mitigate that, or that this number of users hasn't logged in a while. So we have a problem because they haven't been reported as either termed or leave of absence or whatever reason. So that then also ties into cost, because we also can tell them they're actually paying too much in licensing because those users have not been terminated or are not active, right? So it's taking that whole thing, tying it all together for them so that they have that power at their fingertips of not needing to trust what Robert has to say while we sit down to talk. It's much more stands alone in itself. And the question then becomes, how do I move this score? Is the investment I put into IT going to move that number and make me more secure, make me more stable, make my employees happier with the support they're receiving?
So it sounds like leveraging and really interpreting that data is one of the core tenets of DivergeIT. Am I right in that?
It's absolutely true.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So I think the biggest struggle is not only data itself, but you have so many different data sources. So the real transformation that we've gone through over the past couple of years is taking that and figuring out what data really matters. We've even had internal struggles where our people see all this change happening, but what we're really doing is trying out a lot of things and seeing what is going to work, what does matter, what is going to make a difference. How can I keep this, number at a high level very efficiently?
Interesting. And I think, there are obviously other managed service providers out there. Shocking, I know.
I don't know what you're talking about.
DivergeIT's the only one. But, talking about leveraging data is obviously a key piece. What are some of the other ways that DivergeIT's really able to stand out from its competition?
Well, I would, two things. One is our ability to synthesize new technologies into project implementations is bar none. I would put us up against some of the biggest firms in the country in terms of our ability to do that. And oftentimes we're able to do that much more nimbly even than bigger. So an example would be we went from release of the ChatGPT engines into Azure to product in a matter of weeks. So we're currently offering the ability to add your own private AI into your tenancy so that your people could be using a secure version of GPT, as opposed to them taking your information and putting it into a public website. It really violates a lot of fundamental, security measures and policies to allow your people to do that. So with this, not only can you do that, but then you can also integrate all of your information. So whether it's creating a chat bot that answers questions about an HR's handbook, or it is something where they look at all the history of all the tickets automatically when a new ticket comes into our system and provide suggestions to our engineers to make them more efficient. Or it's, I do a lot of contract negotiation, so I can have all my contract history at my fingertips and generate them using this and make changes and taking that into an account versus doing it kind of in a bubble. And then I'm putting my contract stuff out there. So there's a lot of different ways that has an impact. So that's a great example of how we went from start to running really quickly. And specifically our project and architectural teams are the source of that ability to adapt and deploy quickly. We've also been rewarded with the Azure Rainmaker Award because originally we sold more Azure servers and moved people into the cloud faster than any other provider when Azure was coming out a couple of years ago. So we've been really proud to stay on top of the industry trends, maintain our Microsoft partnership certification levels. So we're currently 3 out of the 6 partner designations, competencies right now. So that really sets us apart in many ways from our competitors.
Wow. I think those are, phenomenal. I appreciate the example that you gave. I think that's, it's really interesting how you're able to leverage that new technology and really make accessing the data and accessing the different, work that the companies are doing so much more accessible.
Well, and access is yesterday. Today it's how do I use that data? Because beyond great, I can go pull a spreadsheet with all of the data. I can look at it. But what the power of the AI is really taking us to that next step, which is how do I make it so someone who has no way of becoming a data expert use natural language to get answers to their questions, right? And oftentimes that requires much more skilled labor to answer those questions. And we're democratizing information. That's where the industry is changing.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. I appreciate that insight. That's, obviously the AI is the buzz of everything right now. So I appreciate that insight. So, Robert, I think this has been a great conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, either about the industry, about IT, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the trends that I'm seeing, and I really encourage everybody to start thinking about this before you're in a position where you don't have a choice, is start looking into compliance frameworks. How does that affect your business? Because right now you're probably already seeing more and more complicated cyber liability insurance questionnaires coming your way. And the way the industry and the government is going is towards legislation. So in short enough order, you're going to see a much more stringent bar to get cyber liability insurance of any kind or be protected at all, as well as you're going to see governmental changes that force down regulations on requiring certain types of cybersecurity going forward. So that's the coming future, and being prepared for that and starting to think about how that could affect your business and being ahead of the curve could make a big difference. Just like adopting AI now, they're already talking statistically about the likelihood of you being around if you don't adopt these technologies. Compliance is a similar thing where your inability to adapt and invest to do these things are going to preclude you from opportunity and prevent your growth in the future.
Wow, that's a really great insight. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, Robert, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate all of the insights that you gave, the importance of having a strong IT background, backing your company rather. I think this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Great to have you.